what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
You're listening to Arkansas Preps Weekly on Natural State Sports, your top source for the biggest news in high school sports across Arkansas.
And here we go. Here we go.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into episode number 28 of Arkansas Preps Weekly here on the Natural State Sports Network. My name's Kyle Sutherland alongside Kevin Bohannon. It is week one. And Kevin, I don't know if I'm going to be able to top week zero. What a weekend it was. I had a fantastic 2 days. Of course, I'm almost repeating myself of what I posted on Facebook earlier this morning, but yeah, I always consider it a great honor to cover the Salt Bowl and be able to call that, but to get a chance to go down to Melissa, Texas at that state-of-the-art facility, just state-of-the-art school and state-of-the-art people, frankly, some of the best people that I've met, just so incredibly friendly. But we got to watch Parkview come away with the win, and you know how I feel about beating Texas teams. It's more so about a respect thing. Absolutely. Anytime we get to beat one, I don't care who it is. And this was a quality opponent. This wasn't a DeSoto or Galena North Shore or Duncanville or anything like that. But this was the number 9 team in Class 5A Division II that Parkview took down and made a defensive stand to do so. So what a fantastic weekend it was. What a fantastic week 0 it was as we prepare for week 1. Of course, we're going to recap most of week 0 and do a little bit of preview of week 1.
Yeah, and I hope everybody had a great Labor Day. For us, it's a little special. Amber's birthday fell on Labor Day this weekend. So, it was a fun weekend. Get to do a lot of fun stuff. So, man, it was a whirlwind. Started out Friday night. We told our listeners and everybody out there that follows us, look, if you get tired of us, don't listen to the buzz on Friday, because we were on there for like 8 straight hours. And it was a great time. We got to go down to Sheridan for the Battle of I-270, and the Yellow Jackets, made Kevin Kelly's debut in style. They were up 44-7 at half. And then, just to get to, Mother Nature played an impact on everything finishing up, but we got to see a lot of great performances on Friday from some people we expected. And then there's always a few that, come out of the woodworks, just like, who would have thought Jackson Denton going down for Warren may make them better. And that's not a knock against Jackson, but the backup quarterback could start just for about anybody in the state. And, they just came up short against a very good Greenbrier team. So a lot to talk about and a lot to look forward to this week.
Yeah, there really wasn't a whole lot of surprise. And right now, it's hard to use the word surprise because everything's on paper. Obviously, with all the transfers in and out, the teams look different. So, of course, there was one in particular that we're going to talk about in the smaller classifications. But we'll go ahead. So I'll go ahead and mention to everybody before we get rolling here, the layout looks very, very slim, and it's pretty much like a skeleton PTI rundown, as we call it right now. But that was mainly so Mr. Will Watkins, our fantastic fearless leader here, as far as, of course, one of the owners of the company, but the guy that makes
jack of all trades.
A jack of all trades, does so many different things, including yes, Waffle House Enthusiast is another one of those, and also the graphics maker, and really the brains behind all of the graphics and production that we do here on the Natural State Sports Network. But I wanted to try and make sure that his job was as easy as possible, so that way we could actually let him rest on this Labor Day a little bit here and there. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and start it in Class 7A as we always do. So like I said, this is not the things that you see on the screen are not the only things that we're going to talk about. I'll run through some scores here notable from Class 7A. So Tulsa Union 42-35 over Bentonville. That was a defensive stand in overtime. Conway over Jonesboro 42-21. Grayson Wilson, the Arkansas commit, in his debut with the Wampus Cats, 9 of 13 for 228 yards, 2 touchdowns. Also had 2 touchdowns on the ground. I believe that was actually all in the first half. Pulaski Academy.
2 series in the second half, yeah.
2 series. Okay, so most of the first half, and then a little bit of the third. PA, this is one that surprised me a little bit, Kevin. PA, they continued their dominance of Robinson in week 0 that dates back, I guess, to the COVID year of 2020. They took down the Senators 35-21. I thought this was the year that actually Robinson was going to get them. I think PA is still going to have a great year. I thought that before week 0, but I really thought that Robinson was finally going to get over that hump. They did not. PA gets past that one, 35-21. Then Fayetteville 48-13 over Cabot. So those were kind of the main scores before we get into the Salt Bowl. So talk about Grayson Wilson's performance there. That was kind of the biggest question with the Wampus Cats is, look, we know what kind of talent that he is, but the reality of it is this Conway offense returned one starter. So it was really a question of, will this team be pretty good off the bat? Will it take some time to gel? Look, Jonesboro's a good opponent there. I don't know that they're quite ready to compete with the Conways, the Bryants, and obviously they're not in 7A anymore. But maybe not that top tier, but I still think that they're going to be pretty solid in Class 6A. But really good start there, and Coach Buck James' second year for the Wampus Cats.
Yeah, Jonesboro's a top 6, top 8 team in Class 6A, and they'll get a good game this week against Robinson. I know we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But, yeah, Grayson had a lot of long touchdowns. One of them, he had a 38-yard touchdown pass, and I got to watch the game film yesterday. Under duress, makes a great throw with a guy right in his face. So, getting the ball downfield, matriculating the ball down the field, that, the old saying, that's what he did, and uses his legs when he needs to. So, about what we expected. Right now, he's not going to, they got a really good number 2 in Wesley Tapp. Things, they fall off, but they don't fall off a whole lot. So, I'm excited to see Conway this week against Bentonville, and they step up, another black and gold team, but this one's a little bit tougher. Bentonville took Tulsa Union, gave them all they wanted, especially, and we talked about it last week, what was Bentonville going to look like? New quarterback, Coach Grant's son starting at quarterback as a senior. How would they look at without C.J. Brown? Chris Ficklin looked really good, over 100 yards. So Bentonville-Conway matchup is going to be a barn burner this week. Then Fayetteville, poor Cabot, and they're snapping the ball to the punter. I mean, it just doesn't work for them early in the year against Fayetteville. Whether it's up there, down here, it just doesn't work. So, they'll figure it out. Fayetteville looked really, Garrett Odom, a lot more athletic than what I pictured. I'd seen the film and seen some things, but very athletic with the legs. Jason Delamore had 2 long screen passes that he took for touchdowns. The first one was on the second play of the game. So it's just typical Fayetteville. Looked really good on defense. So you can't sleep on the Purple Dogs. But yeah, the Salt Bowl, everything, it's so slow in the first half, Kyle. I don't know. Sometimes I thought you guys were going to fall asleep up there, but Bryant comes out on top, 52-42. Jordan Walker, excellent game, over 270 yards, 5 touchdowns. They did what they needed to, but you got to say, what if Benton does not turn the ball over as much as they do? I think they have 5 turnovers,
7.
Yeah, I was giving them benefit of the doubt. 7 turnovers, and you only lose by 10 points to Bryant.
Yeah,
Benton is going to be hell to reckon with this year.
I think so too, and that's what Coach. I know that's one that no moral victories or anything like that. But Coach Harris, when I talked to him, and I mentioned this in the story that I wrote, that they felt like they had closed the gap, and they did, and really until the beginning of the fourth quarter. And Kevin, what's crazy is this year, and I don't want. I mean, I know I maybe kind of some of us might have sent the narrative out that Bryant ran away with it. They didn't really run away with it. It was more so of they just had a dominant fourth quarter because they were actually shut out. Bryant was.
They had a dominant stretch.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's what it was because they were shut out in the third quarter. Benton actually took the lead, which, I mean, when was the last time? I mean, maybe the last time that they had the lead was when they won this last in 2005. I doubt that that's the case. But, this is the 10th consecutive.
It's been longer than a decade. Yeah.
Right. It's been a while. I mean, it has been a long time. So, Benton, they, like you said, they're going to be in just fine shape. And even in the past, when they've gotten mercy ruled, they've still made semifinal runs. They've been fine. They're still a great team. But I think that was probably the most shocking thing for me was Drew Davis throwing 4 interceptions. And look, I said multiple times last week, I don't know how many times I said it on the broadcast and pregame, to you and Randy, once RJ and I went on the air, that I think that Drew Davis is the most underrated quarterback in the state. And basically just on his talent, like you look at his performance at the Elite 11. I know that's shirt and shorts. That's a completely different story, but against some of the nation's best. Also look at what he did last year. So I don't obviously judge that off of one game. I still stand by what I said on those things. I think Drew's going to rebound. He still did some good things in this game, despite he had 3 of his 4 interceptions in the first half. But talking about quarterbacks, Jordan Walker might have played the best half at least against quality I'm not talking about, some of the lesser competition in their conference, but as far as play an entire second half with just how sharp he was, that second half might have been one of the best that I've ever seen him play, maybe the best.
Yeah, he was dialed in. And you go back and watch the evolution of Jordan Walker over the past 2 years. And, he got pulled out of the championship game when he was a sophomore. And, there was a lot of hype coming in around him when he came in. He was taking over for a guy that was Bryant royalty at the time. Austin Ledbetter, who's, getting back into football this year. So it was good for them to come out and, receiving core. They lose Matori Singleton. They, the three-headed monster still worked in the backfield for them. But when you got a receiver that can catch 4 balls for over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns in the second half, you got something special right there. So Bryant's gonna be all right.
Yeah, we knew that they had Carter Ratliff coming back, who's a big target there, also a very underrated blocker in my opinion. But Kamari Austin, the one you're referring to, he went off in the second half. I mentioned in the pregame that he was one to watch. Really was quiet. I think he had 1 target in the first half, and then also too, Jonathan Frost, like basically another Travis Hunter type. And I mean, just in terms of starting on defense, starting on offense, being utilized on special teams. That's a big addition for Maumelle. Of course, he was at Bryant, went to Maumelle, and then came back for his senior year. So, Bryant's got they got a tough slate. They go to Christian Brothers, then they play Parkview, which we'll of course talk about Parkview here in a second. Benton is actually off this week. That's one of the positives over the past.
And then they got Harding.
Yeah, so Benton, they've got a tough schedule ahead too, but they've at least got a week off to kind of look at. Okay, here's what we struggled with, because, like you said, it's really they had 4 interceptions and 3 fumbles. They had 4 fumbles, 3 of them they lost. So that there's a lot of things to clean up. But that's one thing, and we'll move on talk about more 6A here in a second. But I did want to bring up their receiving core, because that's something that Coach Harris had pointed out. You look at Maddox Davis, Elias Payne, also Will Carter. There was Carson Collett, who also didn't even play. That's their fastest receiver. They've got about
Carson
4.
Collette,
And then also Bronson Koulis, fantastic H-back. They're great hands, great blocker. So they feel good about what they have there. I think that they're up there with the deepest receiving corps in the state. Luther Tucker, he really, really impressed me. We knew that I knew watching him. I'd never seen him live obviously in person at Southwest when he was there for his first 2 years. He really impressed me catching the ball too. Of course, that one of those touchdowns, or actually the touchdown that he caught, he took a really big shot in the end zone. Still caught onto it, or caught it. So I think that's a big question answered there. It was really because the past couple of years, they've been a little bit of really since Garrett Brown graduated, they've been somewhat of a quarterback by committee in a lot of cases. So you look at Jack Woolbright, Klein Hooten, Gary Rideout, and now Drew Davis that's in that mix. So I think that's a good question that they answered as far as the backfield. They've still got Quentin Godley as well. Also, TJ Williams, I believe, is the sophomore's name that they really like. So that was a big question that I think they answered. As far as now, Luther and Braylon are obviously 2 totally different players. But that's big time to have, especially with what they like to do, what Justin Ray, the offensive coordinator, likes to do as far as with moving people out of the backfield and stuff like that. I think they've got a great one in Luther.
Yeah, and Justin's a Benton boy. He played for Benton, and he does a really good job of outnumbering you. That's one of the things that they've always done a good job when they utilize the H-back motion shift. That's one thing that Bryant had done in the past too. Really under Paul Kelly, and Justin Ray, really is doing that as well at Benton. So it was good to watch. And the mistakes that Davis made. I don't think he's going to make those in the future. Throwing it to a linebacker on a slant route where he's sitting right there. He just, sometimes a game like that, just adrenaline keeps going. You're like, I have the arm talent. Let me try to throw it through people. And you really can't do that against somebody with the caliber of Bryant, especially with the experience that Bryant defense has. Then
on down to Class 6. Oh, went away there. On down to Class 6A. We'll start with a couple of scores. So Van Buren got the first win of the 24 season and a comeback victory over Alma in the Battle of the Bone, 37-27, a 39-yard interception by Caden Webb. Pretty much sealed the game. Then Fort Smith Southside also rallied from 21-0 down, Kevin, to beat Northside. Man, that's their second one in a row. And they had lost multiple. I mean, it was a pretty lengthy streak, if I'm not mistaken, that they had. So second year in a row that the Mavericks win the Battle of Rogers Avenue. Marion, another team that had to rally. This was like after a 2 or 3 hour weather delay, whatever it was.
They had bad weather issues.
Yeah, it was tough. I know that there was a lot that were postponed, canceled, whatever the case may be, but they take down Coach Clay Toddy, the second-year head coach, and win 34-26. How about this, Kevin? Shiloh Christian, talking about a second ago in 6A, Braylon Russell was a big question mark of who was going to replace him at Benton. Who was going to replace Bo Williams at Shiloh Christian? You never count the Saints out under any circumstance.
Mason Griffin, baby.
Man, hey, I knew this kid was good. We saw flashes of it last year. I think Bo sat out for like the Dardanelle game or something like that.
Yeah, he was
and we saw flashes. Yeah, so the way this kid, man, 11 carries, 142 yards, 4 touchdowns. Also had a 70-yard passing touchdown, did Griffin Mason. So the Saints take down Farmington and Coach Tommy Tice, the Hall of Famers. First game there, 34-6. How about those Mountain Home Bombers taking down West Plains, Missouri? Coach Steve Aries' former team in the Battle of the Border, 43-21. Catholic walks off Arkansas High. Well, sort of walks off. It was like 15 seconds left in the game.
Jackson England dropped a dime into double coverage. Great throw by Jackson.
Hayden Rove, that was the one touchdown he had. So there was a 23-yard touchdown to Hayden Rove. And then we'll talk a little bit about this one. You definitely got to give it some attention. Sheridan, they win the Battle of 270 for the first time since, I believe it was 2019, 44-20. Yep. Huge nights from Dax McMillan and also Zay Stevens. Man, I'll tell you, that's going to be a good combination this year. And look, we talked about last week that, I think that maybe Sheridan might be getting some high rankings because of who their coach is. And I still stand by that. I'll say that, while also mentioning that this was massive because you broke a streak against a rival in your first game. I've said it over and over again that this town, they just needed something to be excited about football again. That's really what it boils down to. And Coach Kelly has brought that. I mentioned last week about how I think that, and I just kind of repeated it there, that who is coaching them, I think, has a lot to do with that. And I think that the proof is in the pudding when you look at their last coach before that. Coach McBroom was an 8-time, I think, state champion at Ada, Oklahoma. And the excitement. Now, there might have been some excitement when he came in, but it wasn't even close
not this
to
level.
Yeah. Not even close. So that being said, I'm not trying to be a negative Nancy by any means. I want to give all the credit in the world to Sheridan for doing that because I know that this town has experienced plenty of hard times. Yes, back in the 60s, 70s, this was, I guess you could say, I don't know, a juggernaut's the word, but a very, very successful program. Had some good years under Coach Don Campbell, had some good years under Billy Dawson, but this is really the most excited the football program has been. Definitely, I would probably say in our lifetime, Kevin. I think that's fair to say.
Oh, yeah. So 2001, they did okay, did pretty good, but, being there, Kyle, and, it was full at 5:30. I mean, an hour before kickoff, it was packed on the Sheridan side. Whitehall side was just filling in, and then they had the student section for Whitehall was on the track. So they had tents around the track where you could set up. So, and we're talking to Coach Rick Treadway before the game, and he's like, man, this is how Friday night football should be. And that's why they got Coach Kelly there. And, as we're watching warm up and everything, walking out on the field, Whitehall passed the eye test. They look like, it shouldn't even be close. Sheridan goes 4 and out, does not gain a yard in their first possession. Stop Whitehall. First play of the second possession. What do we got? Hook and ladder, baby. And I know it's hook and lateral, but it's a colloquial term. It's hook and ladder. Coaches have always been saying it. That's how you signal it in. Coach Kelly doesn't signal it in like that, but that's something that's been used in the past. Zay Stevens out of the backfield. Peyton Sterritt catches it, flips it to him. He goes 80 yards just in a blink of an eye, and it's on from there. Whitehall comes back, scores. Sheridan scores. Sheridan gets their first onside kick right at the end of the first quarter. Sheridan scores. Next thing you know, it's 27-7, and I'm thinking, and I've seen this before, that is just the same thing. Same thing at PA. 44-7 at halftime. Mercy rule. Go into the second half. Whitehall is going to take some lumps, but they've got some athletes. And, there were so many great performances in Class 6A last week, Kyle.
Yes, there was.
Kane Archer was 25-29, 289. Also had over 100 yards on the ground. Isaiah Harrington, one of those really good receivers that they had, like 4 catches, 116 yards, had a touchdown. Jalen Smith from Marion, that comeback win that they had. Win was up on Marion 20-14 at halftime. Marion comes back. Jalen had 225 yards of total offense, 5 touchdowns, one of those being a passing touchdown, 18-yard passing touchdown to get that final score. And we don't want to discount Shiloh. The final was 47-6. 34-6 was at halftime. That was misreported, but yeah, 47-6 was the final in that one. So yeah, like you said, 142 yards, 4 touchdowns by our guy Griffin, and a 70-yard touchdown pass. That was just in that, talk about 6A. Lakeside beating Lake Hamilton for the second straight year.
Yeah.
What a run. I picked Lake Hamilton in that one. I wasn't going to be shy about that, but Grady Oman, 4 touchdowns. What a night. And had an interception on defense to seal the deal at the end of the game.
Yeah, no doubt. And you touched on Greenwood and Kane Archer. What a phenomenal performance. Also had like 113 yards on the ground.
Yeah. Over 100,
just, man, and this was actually pretty close for a little bit. And then Greenwood just separated. I loved what you and Randy and Barry were talking about on the post game on the scoreboard show about how you talk about doubling people up. You don't think of doubling people up as 70. You think of maybe
70.
40. Yeah, you think of
70.
Like 42-21 or something like that. That's when you think of doubling up.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, but that's what this Greenwood offense, look, we've heard about it. We've heard kind of some rumblings around town, around 6A that, Kevin, this could end up, this is a very tall statement, but this could end up being a Greenwood offense that we talk about throughout history, right? As time and time goes on. Now, look, Bentonville West is, I know that they're not one of the state title contenders. We talked about them being a dark horse, and I wholeheartedly agree with you that they are. I think they 1,000% can compete for one of the top 3 spots. Probably the number 3 spot is a best case scenario right now. Absolutely.
Right,
absolutely. I think so too. And I think that they'll be right up there in the mix, but this is still, look, this is a quality 7A school against a juggernaut 6A school, and Greenwood just does what they do. They're just, I don't know how they're going to be defended, Kevin. I really don't, because, how do you defend Isaiah when you look at just Isaiah running a hitch, and then what's that famous play, a hitch, comeback, whatever that route may be, basically just him coming back to the ball, catching it, spinning around and going. You got to contain Grant Carnes. Is it Champ Davis that transferred in? I just don't know how you do it. I really don't.
You don't. You hope, and when I say hope, they have a bad night, and you're on top of your game, and your offense is clicking. It's gonna be a shootout type game to where you beat them 58-56. It's gonna be that Tyler Wilson against Stephen Lux type deal. In the state championship game, and they make a couple turnovers. That's what's got to happen for you to beat these guys. And Coach Young was upset. Post game, Tim Terry was talking to us, and they put the ball on the ground a few times. He made the comment that, Hunter Wilkerson was there for 3 years and didn't fumble as many times as they did on Friday night. So there's always something to work for. And, Randy made the point. He was like, how can you put up 70 points and be upset about it? And I was like, you demand perfection. That's why they're as good as they are. That's why the tradition has gone on as long as it has. In the past 25 years, they've made the semifinals 18 times over multiple classifications. So there's that's the reason that these guys are that good. Chris Young, 4 years you've been in the state championship game 4 times. You've won 2 of them, and now looking to go number 5. You bet darn Skibby they're going to be, looking at everything and try to figure out how to be better next week, because it doesn't get any easier. And they're going to push those kids every time, because they're telling their guys, look, you're playing against the toughest opponent there is. That's yourself every week. Go out there and get it done. Everything else will take care of itself. Muted.
Dang it. I got a Post-it note. And I was doing so good, but now, okay, that's all right. It's a holiday, so we're just going to give that mulligan.
Mulligan.
But Maumelle over Sylvan Hills. I expected Maumelle to win this game wholeheartedly. Yeah. I did. I thought Sylvan Hills would be a little bit more competitive, and I think it was in the third quarter. They lost quarterback Tyler Hampton, so that definitely hurt them. But I didn't expect Sylvan Hills to get blanked. This is a team that went winless last year, and you really expected them to be improved. And they've still got 9 guaranteed more games. I shouldn't say guaranteed. COVID taught us not to use the word guarantee. Yeah. But they've got 9 regular season games left, so it's not the end of the world. But I thought that one was going to be a little bit more competitive. But talking about successful teams, talking about big nights, Camden Fairview, impressive 40-25 win over Arkadelphia. Huge night from Junie Atkins. Greenbrier, you talked at the top of the show about Greenbrier and Warren, that matchup, 41-34 over the Lumberjacks did. The Panthers win. And then Enoch Asan, 259 yards, 3 touchdowns. You mentioned, oh man, Grady, I think that joke is going to be going on for a long time now. Grady Oman scores 4 touchdowns, rushed for 252 yards, averaged 11 yards per carry in a 34-29 win over Lake Hamilton. Now, of course, you pull out the Arkansas Democrat. And now, I know Coach Gillerin well. I think the world of him. I don't think he was making an excuse whatsoever, but he had a pretty spicy quote. You open up the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, and you have a pretty spicy quote. Now, I don't know that I would have said it in the way that he did. He is not a man. He did, and he is not a man that's going to pull punches. That's one of the many things that I respect. Coach, and for those that don't, Coach Gillerin is truly one of the nicest human. I'm not brown nosing you. I'm telling 100%. The truth. He's one of the nicest human beings that there is in coaching right now. But again, he's not afraid to say what's on his mind. And as you saw in the Arkansas, basically, essentially what he was quoted in saying, and I'm paraphrasing, was talking about how the Arkansas Activities Association has these implements as far as temperatures and when you can practice and all these different things. What's that called? The wet bulb?
Yeah, the wet bulb.
The wet bulb that combines humidity and temperature and all those different things. And essentially what he was alluding to was his team was not as well of conditioned as he felt like they should be because they were not able to practice in those conditions. Now, that's what I took out of it. Again, I was paraphrasing that quote. Now, I will say where I do agree with him is that I think that this time of year, it's almost impossible to be in game shape really until you get until about week 2 or 3. So I tend to agree with that part of it. Now, as far as the game goes, it was I think last year, you look at Lake Hamilton and losing Easton Hurley, things just didn't go well for them. They were really young. I think this is going to be a well-improved Lake Hamilton team. Probably definitely make the playoffs, not go 3-7. I think that's what their record was last year. So, but all the credit in the world to Lakeside. Kevin, I love Rockwell. I love what he's done there. I love the excitement that he's brought to the program as a former assistant. That's just a fun program to watch. I've watched them a lot in 7-on-7. I love the way he coaches. He's hard on his kids, but he's always teaching. And that's one thing that's always stuck out to me. So love what Lakeside has continued to do, and definitely another big win. Last year was the first time they beat Lake Hamilton in 30 years or something like that. So, to get that win for the second year in a row, huge win for the program and certainly a good start to the season. It goes without saying.
Yeah, Landon West is going to be a good quarterback. He got to play last year for Lake Hamilton and, had a good night on Friday. Had a 65-yard touchdown pass to Parker Van D. That was really big. And, this game wasn't a runaway. It was late, 34, back and forth. Lakeside never could get past really that one-score deficit. They increased it 34-23, and then Lake Hamilton tacked on a late touchdown, and then Lakeside sealed the deal. So, Coach Rockwell, like you said, Garen Rockwell has taken this Lakeside program to that next level right now. They were 8-4 last year. They won 2 really good. Shootout of the South was one of them that they won in 7-on-7 this year. So, a lot of good things, So, they're going to be able to throw the ball, but when you got Grady Oman that, can run the ball like he did, goodness gracious. 21 carries, 252 yards, 4 touchdowns, had a pick. And like Coach Rockwell said, they could put him on defense if they want to as well. They're that good. Going back to Maumelle real quick, they were up 6-0 at halftime. Coach Maupin, they just had some issues, had some penalties, just things weren't really working out. And then the floodgates open. When you can run the ball like they did, Jacob Henry, 155 yards, 3 touchdowns. Andrew Bjork had over 100 yards.
Bjork's a really good quarterback, man. He's a
and they're going to use Levi Warrior as well.
Yeah,
which lets Bjork run the ball a little bit, so they can use him in a lot of different ways. That just opens up your playbook even more when you got a guy like Bjork that can be put in different situations to get the ball in his hands. Maybe. We had kind of the same situation my first year at Sylvan Hills where, we had J.D. Miller coming back as a senior, and then Trey Doss was a sophomore. And, you can run jet sweep pass. There's a lot of different things that you can give different looks to. So, Maumelle is going to be good. They had punt return called back, I believe, maybe 1, maybe 2. I know there was a blindside block on one of them, but they play physical. They play tough. They're taking on the personality of Brian Maupin, and you gotta love to see that going in. This week it doesn't get any easier for them or Parkview, and it's going to be a lot of fun to see that game.
And man, I'm telling you, you're always on top of it, always with those perfect segs, because I was going to bring up Parkview next and talk about what they did over the weekend. And they repped Arkansas. That was the theme of the week, was rep Arkansas. Because talking to Coach Brad Bolding, I talked with Brad just about every day last week about this or that. And that was one thing that he had said. Yeah, we're going to go down there. We want to make a statement for ourselves, but we want to represent this state, and we want to do this for the state of Arkansas, because I think that there's many people that are like me, and I'm probably sure you're one of them, that it's just extra special when you beat it. Yeah, we love our kids competing against the Oklahoma schools, the Missouri schools, Louisiana, whatever it may be. But Texas just adds a little bit more flair, man.
Yeah, Texarkana and Texas High, back when I was in high school and first few years of college, and I'm sure even when you were in high school, that was always a big deal. They're not playing any long. They're not playing anymore because Texas High is still in that level. Arkansas High is not quite there, but Texarkana was playing Liberty Ilo every year. They're right across the road. Malvern has played a couple of Texas schools, and we were all 4 of those Arkansas schools representing and beating them Texas folks down there. But everything's bigger in Texas, and football is bigger in Texas. So for Parkview to go down and make a statement like that against a 5A2 school, Division II school, is huge. The performances speak for themselves. Marion Robinson had a pick 6. Monterio Elston had 161 yards, 2 touchdowns. Guys,
both over 60 yards. And it looked like that Parkview was going to run away with. They were up, I think it was 21-6 for a little bit. And see, this Melissa team, they have a massive And then so 27-20, I don't think I mentioned 27-20 for those that don't know, that was the final score. But for a while, Parkview was looking like that they could run away with it. Melissa has a massive offensive line. They got a dude with an
quarterback's good.
Quarterback is very good. He's a D1 prospect, and then they've got Owen Hollenbeck that's going to play with Amarian Robinson at OU. And but they graduated a lot of skill players. But man, Jacob Nye, big H back, he's about 6'4", 6'5". I looked him up. He's got an offer from, and we need to tell our guy Luke Matheson this to make sure and mention to Butch Jones that since he's got an Arkansas State offer, he needs to be all over this kid. I have never seen a wide receiver dude. He gave a couple of the Parkview defensive backs some nightmare. He was just unstoppable. He was running these quick hitch routes. He was just basically anytime they needed a play, that's who they were looking to. And he came through. He had 3 touchdowns, I think a 2-point conversion. He was just unstoppable. But really there at the end, Parkview, they just refused to lose. A great strip sack from Kevin Ellis, who is a very underrated linebacker. He doesn't have all the height in the world, so it's probably a big reason why he's not getting this heavily recruited. But a 3-year starter for the Patriots, a big-time playmaker, forces the fumble. Chris Edwards recovers. Trip Keeter had a great call on that. Man, we had so much fun calling that game. But just to be there and witness that in that kind of stadium, it was incredible. Coach Bolding was obviously extremely excited. The guys were. But, we got, of course, on the Natural State Sports Network on Friday. Now, it does kick off the same time of the Razorback game, but you can watch Pine Bluff and Dallas Kimball, another Texas matchup. The next week, you mentioned Texas High, I think, is when Texas High plays Fayetteville. So we've got a few more Texas matchups, but, so far we're 1-0. Thank you to the Parkview Patriots.
That's right. And, if you got a 3-year starter at linebacker in a Bobby Bolding defense, that's dangerous because, that young man's football IQ is off the charts. And a lot of the times turnovers are about being in the right place at the right time and knowing your assignment, being gap sound, which is what they were. Melissa's going to put up a lot of games where they have 40-plus points. So to put 20 up on Parkview, we've seen how good, their defense has been the last couple of years. That was a really good test coming out and a really good job by Parkview of not giving in to the moment. And I think that's one thing that, Brad Bolding was really excited about. And you could tell in the post-game interview, which was great, by the way, of just how big and how proud he was that those guys didn't make it that big. Big stadium. Yeah, they've played in the War Memorial the last 2 years, last 3 years, what have you. But the guys that have been there since they were freshmen, this is a culmination. It's their year to go out and show not only the state but the country how good this program is. And that was one of the things that I really took from that win.
I don't know if you caught there at the end, but he had said that. So it's Coach Matt Nally from Melissa, class act, exceptional guy. I'll tell you what, he's fiery between the kickoff and the final whistle. But man, just could not be a nicer guy, and they were all just so hospitable there. But I guess he had said something to Coach Bolding because Bolding mentioned there at the end it's a $52 million complex. Well, I think
not 40.
Coach Nally must have read my piece because I had quoted Coach Bolding as saying our guys are not intimidated by $40 million facilities. So that's my assumption is where that came from. So I'm sure there was a little bit of fun poked, back
that's
and
awesome.
forth on that. But yeah, a lot of fun there. So on down to Class 4A, not a ton to talk about here. Kind of for the most part, it was business as usual. Now, one thing, Kevin, that I was a little bit shocked of, I know that, there's been, we touched on it last week, that there's been, some struggles of different sorts in Nashville, both on and off the field. This was game one under new head coach Sean Jackson that took over for Mike Volarovich, and things did not go well. Magnolia won 26-7 over the Scrappers. They only had 126 yards of total offense, 5 rushing yards. I don't know. And the main reason I'm bringing this up is just because I don't know that I've ever seen that from Nashville before. Definitely, at least not in my adult life. That was definitely not. Again, I'm not necessarily shocked that they lost. I think it's just maybe in that manner that there just wasn't a whole lot of production. So wanted to follow up with that because I know that we had touched on it last week. Also, Southside, Batesville, big game over. They were up big on Forest City. Forest City. You got to give it to Coach Swinton and the staff. I've heard a lot of, saw a lot of statuses from on Facebook from Southside people talking about, just the staff, how friendly the kids were and how hard they fought. Now I know I don't remember the young man's name, but I know that they had Forest City did a player that went down with a bad injury. So all the best to him. Certainly wanted to put that in there, but yeah, I wanted to give credit to what they've done because look, this is a really good Southside team up there with I would put them in the state title contender category, and so got to give hats off to Forest City. I know in their benefit game they fought back against Bauxite, and they did that in this case as well. Also, too, let's talk about an individual performance here that possibly could be the player of the week. Creed Vega from Dardanelle, big 45-7 win over Little Rock Hall. 7 carries, 131 yards, 3 touchdowns, 6 of 14 passing, 115 yards, 2 scores, and also I have in my notes here, he caught a 440-yard reception. That's 44. Not possible. 44. I added an extra 0 there. But, I wanted to touch on this kid, Kevin, because I think that and I will say this, and I will fully admit it, I probably haven't talked about him enough, and I don't think that a lot of media has. Now, granted, Dardanelle, they were in Class 5A the last couple of years and, had some rough times. But talked with his dad, Phil, this morning. Of course, we're recording on a Monday evening here. And I know that who's also the head coach, and he's got I can't remember if he said he had a Harding offer or not, but I know that that's the one that's mainly talking to them. Could you imagine Creed Vega running that Harding offense? You look at Cole Keelan from Harrison. He runs he could run that offense in his sleep. He loves it. He loves the flex bone. He runs it so effectively.
And he was a spread quarterback in high school.
He was a spread quarterback. He was getting looked at linebacker. But Creed Vega is just such a different type of player because he's so strong. He could be a running back at the next level probably. He just does so many different things. And he's also getting some looks from other colleges around, the in-state colleges, D2s and stuff like that. But Dardanelle, I also talked with our guy Jim Withrow on Saturday, Little Rock Hall's head coach, just kind of talk about, because I was wanting to get a little bit of a scoop on their players, and he kind of told me about a few more. But man, I'll tell you, this is a kid to really, really watch, especially with Dardanelle bumping down in Class 4A or bumping down to Class 4A. I think this is really just the beginning. And I say the beginning, he was a 2,000-yard passer and a 1,000-yard rusher as a sophomore.
Yeah, and his older brother Drew, who I've known since he was 12. Yep. So I've known Creed since he was 8, 9 years old, and had that relationship with that family going back. I had Drew at Coach Fullerton's baseball cross training camp back when he was 12, 13 years old. Followed him throughout high school and everything, and it didn't surprise me when I saw all the stats rolling in and everything, and I'm like, well. 6 touchdowns, 3 different ways. That's a pretty easy guess, unless somebody can top that for my primetime performer of the week on Scoop and Score. So, that was pretty easy. So, Dardanelle's a top 10 team in Class 4A now, no doubt. I have no doubt that that they'll have a shot to make a deep run depending on the draw that they get. It's going to be a really good matchup. I believe they have Elkins this week. Or no, I don't think so. That might be coming up soon, but
I think they do play them in the non-conference.
Somebody else, but it just made my mind. Elkins got a good win last week over Miami, Oklahoma, 31-7, I believe. So DeWitt beating CAC 31-7. That was huge. Another game that really stood out for me that week. But everything went to plan in Class 4A. Warren, of course, dropped their game. Gentry 48-45, their first game under Tyler Clark after Justin Bingham went to BB. But going back to the Magnolia game, Adam Kirby is the head coach for Magnolia now, coming up, and he won some state titles down in Louisiana. So
good coach,
great coach, and we'll figure out if Nashville's going to have a chance moving forward. It'd be interesting to see Ashdown this coming up week, talking about teams that are down there in that conference or whatever. But Bauxite, I'll end on this one, 42-0 over Glen Rose.
Yeah.
Talk about just taking them to the woodshed. I mean, Caleb Perry didn't hold back. He was fiery on the sideline on Friday night, and his kids responded. So a big win for the Miners to kick off their season.
Yeah, Marcus Wembley, the Oklahoma commit, he had a big night, man. I think he was. Do you know? And I don't want to get too far into speculation. I know Eli Perry is Coach Perry's son was a quarterback, but Marcus played a lot. That he was pretty much their primary quarterback that night. So I didn't know if there was an injury we might not know about or something like that.
I don't know. I think they just found out that they can do something, and they ended up doing it a lot.
Fair enough. Yeah, I know that's what they like to do. Of course, Marcus did playing quarterback his sophomore year, really out of necessity. I think that was when Hunter Farrell went. That's right, with that real bad knee injury. So, he played a lot. And, man, I mean, Marcus, and that's what – and I'll say this, and we'll go to 3A. Like, that's one thing that there's been some questions of, how's he going to translate to the next level? But when you can play so many positions – as well as he plays, just a straight up athlete, I feel pretty confident. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but I feel like some people might just be kind of writing him off because he's not a Razorback commit anymore, which is stupid to me. That's how some people are. But yeah, he's a hell of a player, man. Certainly can't take anything away from him. So heck of a player. It's a high school show. I apologize for that. So on down to Class 3A. So there were some lopsided scores in this one. We'll go through some from the top teams. Walnut Ridge, third. I was a little bit shocked I figured Walnut Ridge would win this one, but 37-0 over East Poinsett County. Fordyce, man, 34-0 over Monticello, 4A school.
I think it's 34-16.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I think I think I looked at one of the scores that were not completed on. Anyway, so Boonville 14-10 over Poteau, Oklahoma. I was talking to Glenn Parrish last week, and I kept saying Poteau, and he goes, it's Poteau, right? I was like, sorry, man, my bad. Then Bismarck, how about this one? 35-31 over Mansfield. Now, I do, Kevin, not to disrespect Mansfield, I do have some questions of whether or not they were a one-hit wonder from last year. I know they got a lot of quality players back, but I mean one-hit wonder as far as can they make a deep playoff run again? I don't think that they're going to be a bad team by any means, but I do think Bismarck is going to be a really good team. I don't have any questions about that, and they definitely had a big win over the Tigers to start their season. Prescott 53-10 over 4A Cross at Newport, 48-30 over Mark Tree. Kevin, I'll tell you what, their performance that they had, the Greyhounds over Mark Tree, there's some that are automatically putting Newport over Prescott at this point. I'm not sure I'd quite go to that level, but I'd certainly say that with what they have, man, especially with Keandre Barker coming in, with Moni Wren coming back. I mean, it's going to be tough for 3A to keep up with that speed. And if anybody's going to keep up with speed, it's certainly Prescott. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if this is possibly the 3, not to get the cart before the horse here. And so as we are at the beginning of September, that wouldn't shock me if that might end up being the 3A final, but I don't know that I'm quite ready to say Prescott's not the number 1 team yet.
I agree. And CrossFit had kept it close for a while. It was 19-10 going into, last half of the third quarter, and then just Prescott blew it open. 53-10 was the final. But think about this, Kyle. You got in that 3-3A, and we saw how good the 3-3A is now, okay? Walnut Ridge did their thing, 37 blank over East Poinsett County. And then Newport did that. Ken Carter for Mark Tree, kudos to him. He had 175 yards, 3 touchdowns against a good Newport team. Monterey had a 75-yard touchdown kickoff return. Barker had a shade under 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. So they were very even on the night. So, but Rivercrest hasn't played yet. So you got Walnut Ridge, Rivercrest, Newport all in the same conference. And you talk about it being a potential state title game. The way it usually works out in Class 3A is the seeding just works out crazy where you get a Newport Prescott game in the quarterfinals or something.
That's right. Yeah.
So whoever gets that 3 seed, and we haven't looked ahead to what the bracket matchups are going to be. It's week 0 for crying out loud. So we're not there yet, but we will be in about 2 or 3 weeks, I promise. So, but, and we talked about, and you can see it's right there on our lineup right there. Harmony Grove, Ouachita County, the HGOC, 30-20, 5th straight win over Junction City. Huge win. And this is a team, and we talked to Dylan Word, and we appreciate our guy, getting us a lot of information this week.
Yeah.
This is a team that lost a 3-year starter, all-state guy in Caleb Johnson, who's playing 2 sports at Southern Arkansas right now. They completely flipped their whole offensive philosophy. They're throwing the ball all the way around the place. RPO, they just ran the ball all over Junction City. And that's something that I know Carlisle was looking out for. Of course, Carlisle had an easy 38-6 win over Drew Central. But Carlisle recognized that coming up this week. Carlisle Junction City, Carlisle. And, Coach Horsecamp, you got to give him credit. The great coaches can tailor their offensive philosophy to your playmakers and their strengths. You don't try to put a square peg in a round hole. It's like Bobby Petrino. He had Ryan Mallett. He had Tyler Wilson. He could throw the ball for 3,500 yards, what have you. You have a Lamar Jackson, a Taylor Green. You have a lot more RPO option type stuff. So kudos to Coach Horsecamp and the HGOC Hornets this week getting a huge win over Junction City.
You said what? It was the 6th win or the 5th consecutive?
I apologize.
I wasn't correct. I couldn't remember. I know that it was at least the 5th. I think maybe it is. Actually, I did put it in my notes. It is 6th straight. I couldn't remember. I couldn't remember which one, but now the series is actually tied 14-14. You mentioned Dylan Word, man. Really do appreciate him. He is always beyond. You think about just so we could go on and on about these people at this school or whatever, but yeah, man, he's always very detailed in his notes, and we certainly appreciate all that he sent us. Of course, that's the voice of the Hornets. And I also had a chance to talk with, of course, we'll talk about Carlisle and Junction City here in a second, since that's where you and I will be on Friday. I talked earlier on Monday morning with Coach Ball at Junction City, and of course, he's like any coach would be. We're not going to let that phase us. It's week 1. That's kind of a team that's had our number as of recent. But the single wing, you talked about the RPOs, is really once they got in that single wing, they really just had a lot of. Of course, they also got in a 14-0 hole. Junction City, they were 14 out. That is, especially when you're running the football really well. They struggled to kind of get the passing game going. So he was very proud of the effort to come back, but really, the way that his team started the rally. But they were also missing a key 2-way lineman that's really big for them that might or might not be back this week. The jury's still out on that. So, but he talked about, I think it was the 08 team that won state. They had lost their first or second game or something like that, and then went on a run. Of course, we talked about it last week. He was such a great player on those Junction City teams of the later 2000s. But I think that I guess I'll tell you what, let's just go ahead and go on down to Class 2A, because that's pretty much what we were mainly going to talk about. Since there wasn't a whole lot of big news from Class 2A.
Yeah.
We're going to mention that as well. Of course, I also did want to give a shout out to our guy, Van Pascal, before we continue this. His first, huge win over, what was the Harrisburg? Yeah, it was 22-0. I remembered the score. I couldn't remember that. Yeah. So yeah, shout out to the man, Van Pascal there. But back to the Junction City and Harmony Grove and all those. So that was something I think is really awake. He said, Coach Ball did say that the Fordyce scrimmage, they had some struggles in that one. Then, of course, Harmony Grove, OC, this was kind of some wake-up calls for them. They found out what they're good at and what they're not good at, obviously the things that they have to work on. So you think of a team like Carlisle. I mean, this could very well be, talking about a second ago with a 3A championship preview or championship final, or possibly with Prescott and Newport. What we're about to see with Carlisle and Junction City could very well be a preview of the 2A state championship here in the first week of September. So, I think that's one thing. And also talking with Coach Wilson, that's the one mistake that a lot of teams can make, especially in today's age. You pull out your phone and you look at social media and you see that people are overreacting, dropping Junction City X amount of spots and polls and all these different things. This microwave society that we live in, it's all of a sudden, okay, what in the world's going on here after one freaking
They gave
game?
Up 30 points.
Yeah, that doesn't even count towards the postseason. So that's what I would say is, with respect to anybody that might be freaking out about this Junction City team, just calm down. Just calm down. As Aaron Rodgers said, what was that in 2015? Relax. So this is still, this is going to be what we have going on Friday is massive for both of these towns. You got, of course, you and Randy are going to be there. I know that they're honoring all of the Carlisle State. Carlisle has we talked about that too, is they've been the bridesmaid multiple times. They've been to a lot of state finals. They have not been the bride at this point yet. But I think that they'll eventually get, and I don't know if it's going to be this year, but I'm just really excited to see this. And two teams running the spread, it's a lot more common across the board for teams to be running the spread offense. But really, the 2 and 3A were the ones that the run heavy teams that you still see a lot of. In Carlisle and Junction City were once those teams. Yeah. Now they both spread it out. So that's going to be a really fun game, I think, with a lot of great athletes.
And, going back a few years when it was Junction City and Fordyce that were, going back and forth in that 8-2A and just counter-punch. They'd play each other in the regular season conference championship game, de facto conference championship game, and then face each other in the state championship game. So, Fordyce, as we mentioned, in 3A got a big win. But, Junction City – I think they're going to be okay. Little Rock Conway Christian looked good. 42-14 win over Hazen. Huge win for them. Jaron Thomas looked really good at quarterback, put up 42 points. So other than that, 2A is, Mineral Springs gets their first chance this week. They get to play Bismarck.
Big one.
Murfreesboro got doubled up by Center Point last week, but, 2A, we're really looking forward to it this weekend. Maybe get a little bit of barbecue down there. I think they're having a barbecue cook-off contest between Craig's and Nick's. So,
oh my dude, you just made my day. I hope that does happen.
We're looking forward to it. I talked to Coach Steven too. Saw him on Saturday. Yeah, Saturday, and I ran into him and I was like, "Hey man," I said, "I'm looking forward to coming down there." I said, me and Randy will judge that barbecue cook-off contest. Y'all just bring it by and we'll give our scores. I don't care what we got to do. So, it should be a great atmosphere, great time, small town football. When Blaine Toll was at Hazen, Hazen Carlisle is always a huge rivalry. How bad the teams are. But, they're lined up around the track at Carlisle and both sides are full. It'll be like that on Friday night. Junction City, they always travel well. I don't care where they're going to. But it's good to see them back in Class 2A. It just feels right. Everything's just right with the world. The old school back in the late 90s, 2000s. Those teams, it'd be good to see them, back on top again.
I always get excited on Thursdays just because I truly do enjoy just being in the booth and calling a game. But I think I'm going to probably have trouble sleeping looking forward to that barbecue contest because I love me some Nick's. I was actually going to go to Nick's. Shameless plug here. If before I heard that, but Also, too, Craig's Barbecue. I think I've said since I don't even know how long that I think that's the best barbecue in Arkansas, man. I'm telling you. And I love Nick's as well, and I love their catfish and everything. So, but it's going to be a fun time. Of course, you and Randy will be on air from 4 to 6:45 there on campus, and then we'll take it over from you guys at 6:45 for the pregame. RJ Hawk, myself, and Josh Neighbors will be on the call. So definitely hit us up, man. Stop by, see them. I know I'll definitely be hanging around the table, talking to them some. So going to be a fun matchup, Kevin. We don't get a whole lot of, I mean, this is definitely not just, I mean, it's, I was going to say a playoff type atmosphere, but really a state championship type atmosphere. I don't know if this might be the biggest game. Was the game at Carlisle when Hazen played there a couple of years ago when it was like Luke King's senior year and JJ Sullivan and all those guys?
Yeah, it was. And that was the game where Carlisle came back.
Yeah, because Luke was out. Luke had got suspended in the first half. Yeah.
So they came back. You know, that huge. You know, ended up being 2 years ago. So yeah, the atmosphere, it'll be just like that. I guarantee.
And that's one of the. I mean, Jay, this game. The reason why I asked that was because I mean, this game is going to be one of maybe the biggest since that time. There, just as far as just and while it may not have the kind of meaning that game did, as far as playoff implications, conference championships, all those different things, these kind of games just set the tone in a way. When you get something big like this, that's just really big to build off of. So
yeah, we've had Bigelow and Conway Christian last year. Bigelow won that one, and Bigelow won their game 25-8 on Friday night in the new era, and still under Luke Starks, of course, but.
Without that 24 class that was so famous.
Without the 24 class. So big time going 1-0, beating England. And I know they, got a big game with Perryville coming up. That'll be really big. But Bigelow has Mayflower this week. Mayflower coming off a 34-21 win over Jessieville. So a lot of good matchups this week. And, you talk about that state, playoff atmosphere early in the season. I think with Class 2A going back to just 4 conferences, look, we're going to get 8 teams in each conference and really pare it down to the top 16. It's really, gotten more parity and, teams are able to schedule a little bit more unorthodox in the preseason. It's kind of gone 7A through 2A like that. You see a lot of really good, we call it preseason, but it's non-conference matchups. Harding Academy's playing Marion and Benton back-to-back weeks. You got of course, Greenwood doing what they're doing, Parkview and Maumelle, Parkview and Bryant. So while there will be some blowouts over the next 2 or 3 weeks, there's a lot of really good ball games and a lot of really tight matchups that's going to be worth talking about.
I'm looking forward to a couple. I think it is next week. The Fayetteville, Texas High. When you mentioned that, they're like a top 5 team in their class in Texas.
Ryan Mallett, that's one. The school there. I mean,
I'm looking. Not trying to get ahead, but that's one that I've had on my calendar. Really looking forward to. Yeah. So, but speaking of Texas, like I said, we will have Pine Bluff versus Dallas Kimball. I would love to actually be there, but I probably need to spend time with my daughter. It's been I haven't seen her a whole lot. So I'm going to spend time with her on Saturday. I'll be watching the Hogs game while also other football, including that. So you can check that out on the Natural State Sports Network. And then also, too, of course, you can check out all of our other networks, Maumelle, Joe T. Robinson, Mills, Sylvan Hills, and also two-time defending 5A champion Parkview. We've added that network this year, so go check that out. We got a lot of great broadcasters on there, so that do a great job with what they do. So other than that, Kevin, we will see you in Carlisle on Friday. Looking forward to that, and we will see all of you, maybe some of you, this week at Carlisle. But other than that, we'll see the rest of you next week on episode number 29. Take care.